Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer. This is their part number 1515-600. This is a double-acting spring door hinge intended for light-duty applications, or maybe like a louver door, a cafe door that you might see, a saloon door that you might see, well, in a saloon naturally, picture that in your mind's eye. Or maybe a double-acting door that would be between the public area and then behind the cash register area of your favorite convenience store. You know, you'll see it very commonly there. You'll certainly even see these in residential applications. The 1515 is capable of handling doors from 1 1/8 to 1 1/2 thick that are to have a minimum height of 42 inch and a maximum width of 18 inch, and doors up to 18 pounds when you're figuring on a pair of them. The 1515 and the 1514 go together in the sense that they are sister products. The 1515 is capable of a little bit larger version of a door in terms of its thickness, certainly. The 1514, that's going to be doors that are more appropriately 7/8 to 1 inch thick, and will have a similar or the same requirements in terms of door size, but they're for thinner doors is the bottom line. The 1515, this hinge, again 1 1/8 to 1 1/2 thick doors, can also be done as a hold open option. When you add an H to the back side of the part number, you'll have the hold open option. This is going to be available in all of the common finishes. Your brass, your bronze, your chrome, satin, polished. The 600 is prime coat. You can also do a 601 finish, which would be bright black japanned. You could do a 603 finish, which would be zinc. You can do a 640 finish, which would be an oil rub bronze. Bommer will pretty much do any finish on these. If you want satin nickel, they'll do a 646 finish on this as well. Those digits, those numbers, refer to the fact that it's a steel-based hinge, and then with the finish on top of that steel-based material. Now, this hinge, you're generally going to install them in pairs. If you've got something that's a little bit larger than the published guidelines, order an additional hinge. Go with 3 and put 2 up at the top. Although by all means, verify that before you purchase the hinge. You don't want to have to attempt to return something that may not be returnable. But the guidelines are there for your use. Now, there is a link below this video to a document called Template, which is going to give you all of the important dimensional properties. And then there is another document called Instructions. And you really need both documents to make a complete installation. Okay. Let's start with the template, the dimensional drawing. Some of the obvious dimensions we'll just lay out here quickly for you. The leaf that is mounted to the jamb, that's going to be 2 inch tall. And then the door leaf, and how do we know? Well, the door leaf, here's the jamb leaf, obviously. Door opens, door comes back, door goes this way. Here's the door leaf. That door leaf is 2.228 tall, so basically 2 1/4 tall. We'll have an overall height of, they don't actually give it. That dimension is really not that crucial, I suppose, what the overall height is. But in our measuring here, we're about 3 inch. Several other dimensions there that you can review. The important part of the template is that it gives you the size of door, clear frame opening, or net door size. Upper right-hand corner. Let's study that for a moment. You have the ability to come at the sizing multiple different ways. You have to start with something. What are you fixed at? Are you fixed at the clear opening size? You very likely could be. Or perhaps you're fixed at the net door width. You're going to build the frame around it. You're either going to mortise the door leaf or you're not going to mortise the door leaf. And all three of those aspects all need to work together. As you look at the drawing, you're going to have frame sizing information. You have to allow for the B clearance on the lock side of the door. You have to allow a 1/16 of an inch between the edge of the door and the jamb when you have employed a 3/16 of an inch mortise into the edge of the door. If you've not mortised the leaf, if you've mortised this a 3/16 of an inch into the edge of the door, you will allow a 1/16 of an inch between the edge of the door and the jamb. If you've not mortised it, then you have to allow a 1/4 inch. The B dimension. So you have to decide, mortised or not mortised. That will give you a 1/16 or a 1/4 inch on the hinge side. The opposite side of the door. Are you dealing with square edge doors, or are you dealing with rounded or over radiused door styles? If it's square edge, you'll be at a 1/4 inch. If you're going to radius that door, it'll be 1/8 of an inch. Obviously, leaving square edge doors is most common. Radiusing the edge of the door allows you to achieve a tighter margin, which is more appealing to the eye, in my opinion. Radiusing the edge of the door can be done the way that I do it would be having a large router with a very large roundover bit, maybe so large that the base of that router has been modified to fit such a large, 3-inch diameter bit into it, things of that nature. Lay that door down and put that router on there and just make one pass down to radius the door and one more pass to clean it up, and take that door and turn it end for end on the same style facing you and repeat the process. A radiused door edge is nice when you can do it. There are times you can't because maybe you don't have the tool, obviously, or perhaps the construction of the door would really not tolerate taking up that much off the edge of the door. Imagine you had an 1 3/8 thick solid core door that had a specialty veneer applied. Well, a veneer is, in effect, plywood. It's just very thin plywood. You've got the veneer, you've got a crossband, you've got a backer, you've got a cross banding. That could be 3 plies of a plywood, then glued down to the substrate of the core. Then the other assembly of plywood is down below, so you've got, 7 layers technically. But when you take that roundover bit, you're going to be radiusing that like you would the top row of tile in a bathroom. That'd be a bullnose. Well, imagine a double-ended bullnose. You're going to be significantly drawing attention to where the different layers of veneer, backing, cross-banding would all come into play. So perhaps the reasons that you may or may not radius the edge of a door could be varied in several and many, but there are reasons you would do it, there are reasons you shouldn't do it, there are reasons you cannot do it. You just have to determine what you're going to do. Let's say you already had, as an example, let's say that it's more likely that you're going to, that you're going to create an opening. Let's say that you're going to create an opening, that's going to be, well, let's just say 36 inch. You have obviously a pair of doors. Each door is going to be 18 inch net. You are going to, well, wait a minute, you're going to create a 36 inch opening. Question is, what is going to be the size of the doors? Well, in this case, you'll have 36 inch, and you are going to mortise both of the doors. So you're going to deduct from 36 inch, you're going to deduct a 1/16 of an inch, and I'm putting this in as I do it, for the left side of the opening, and then a 1/16 of an inch for the right side of the opening. Then you have to have your tolerance between the two doors. So you're going to leave them square edge. Okay, fine. Technically, you need to have a 1/4 inch in that opening so that you don't make contact. However, with a pair of doors, you're going to need to leave that heavy on a 1/4 inch, because if you have both of the doors that are going to pivot at each other and their most proudest width will be presented into the opening at the same time, I might be tempted to say 3/8 of an inch. Give each side an additional 1/16 of an inch. And it's unlikely that those doors will pass exactly the same point so that those outer corners of the doors would actually strike. And you'll be able to trim one door down, let's say, should you have that problem. But if it was me, I'd probably be at 3/8 of an inch. I might try 5/16 and trim it down if possible. So let's just say you're going to make 3/8 of an inch. You're going to deduct that. So 36 minus a 16th minus a 16th minus 3/8 divided by 2. That's going to be your net door size, which is going to be 17 3/4. And that should clean everything up. So by that logic is how you can determine what size you have to make the doors, and then the height or just the height. There's no requirement on any height consideration regarding the doors. That pretty much concludes and details everything that we need to discuss regarding the template. So I'm going to close that document. The installation instructions. The left-hand side doesn't apply because that's the hold open version. But if you're interested to see what that hinge looks like in a hold open, step 4 will show you the additional part. It's a different hinge, by the way, but it'll show you the additional part that you obviously see. The top of the hinge is different, is what I'm trying to say. On a hold open, it's got a different feature to the top of the hinge. Right side is going to be your installation instructions. Step 1 shows the parts. Let's go over it now. Tension rod, screws, and tension pins. You'll need 2 per hinge. And once you've got the door sized, you can get the hinge applied to the jamb or to the door and get that hung in the opening. You'll want to be real careful because the door is going to fall into the opening because there's no tension set yet on the springs to keep them taut and plumb. Once it's attached, step 1 is to release the spring tension should some be set. From the factory, there is none set. You're going to cut the door edge to receive the flange, assuming that you are going to mortise it. Step 3 is to get that hinge applied to the door. Step 4, get it applied to the jamb. Step 5 is once the door is hanging is really where the fun starts. Assuming that the hinge, the tension collar, this collar here, is pointed towards the top, you will insert the tension rod and then turn the tension collar clockwise. And as you reveal new additional holes, it's into one of those new additional holes that you will insert the tension pin, and you'll do that on both sides. Okay? Step 5, place door in closed position, apply tension to each spring and replace the tension pins. Crank it over, put the tension pin. Adjust the tension as required. Do not apply tension past the 3rd hole of the tension collar, otherwise the light spring in this hinge will distort. You'll hear it creak as you're using it. If you hear a creaking sound and it's a new hinge, you've got too much pressure or too much tension set on the spring. If you've got 3 holes of tension set and the door goes into an elliptical sort of pattern where it is no longer swinging at 90 degree, but in the center it's coming out past 90 degree, you might add a 3rd hinge up at the top underneath the top hinge. But again, these hinges are just meant just straightforward cafe style doors. Okay, doors with the eyebrow detail at the top, louvers, a pair of them, that sort of scenario is where you're going to use these. And the installation is quite simply that easy. The other double-acting spring hinges from Bommer will suggest that you install in a pair of situations, a pair of doors, tension collars pointed towards the top on one side and then pointed towards the bottom on the other side. And when you point them towards the bottom, just simply rotate the tension collar counterclockwise in that regard, because the spring's been turned upside down. It's to keep the doors, the springs will behave better in keeping the doors in a parallel sort of fashion when you invert the one side. Very occasionally someone will call and say the hinge is defective because both of my doors stand askew like this, even though I turned one hinge over. And there's been times I've talked to clients for 5 minutes about this, and finally I realize I've asked the question, is your door beveled? You have to have a square edge door. I've had clients where their doors had a 3-degree bevel and they didn't realize it. And that's why the door would literally sit out, not this way, but both of them would sit askew even when the doors were closed. So you want to be sure that you're dealing with a square edge door on that hinge side. Okay, so the balance of the information that's here, we have discussed everything. There is additional information down below. I should say there's information down below that we've covered. Finally, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Bommer products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website as well as a link to the full product catalog. I would recommend that you review the full product catalog because the name Bommer is quite synonymous with all things spring hinge related, both in single and double acting. Of course, their most widely known hinge, in my experience, is their 3029 series hinge. They're double acting hinge for full size doors, probably from 1 inch all the way out to 1 3/4 for sure, maybe even 2 inch. But they have a whole host of other spring type hinges. And then an entire assembly offering of commercial, institutional, residential hinges that aren't spring related, continuous hinges, and a variety of specialty items like lavatory hardware. If you have any questions on the Bommer 1515 double acting spring hinge for 1 1/8 to 1.5 inch thick cafe style louver doors, or any other Bommer product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.